the main reason why we're here is about something that some of you may or may not have seen or heard of. It's called a blockchain trilemma. Benjamin mentioned it briefly, but obviously, as if he knows that we're going to talk about it. Of course, he knows we're going to talk about it. He doesn't know what we're going to talk about, really. But looking at that, the blockchain trilemma, the definition here, as I'm looking at on Gemini, it says the blockchain trilemma refers to a widely held belief that decentralized networks can only provide two of three benefits at any given time with respect to decentralization, security, and scalability. Now, my question to Benjamin is, obviously, he's a blockchain guy, so he would definitely be aware of this, most certainly. However, this is in relation to Pi network. Do you think, obviously, Pi's protocol they're using is the Stellar consensus protocol, right? And I read a little bit about Stellar's consensus protocol. I read a bit about it. Obviously, we all know when we're talking about protocols, it gets very technical, and people may not understand what this is all about. So in a layman's terms, Benjamin, could you just tell us a little bit about the blockchain trilemma, just a little bit about the significance of security, decentralization, and scalability? And then, of course, the fact that Pi Network has is using the Stellar consensus protocol, does that mean that they somehow have the tendency to solve that problem? Because it is a problem. We need all three elements. We can only have two of three at a given time. So do you think with that, they can solve that problem?
All right. That's an excellent question. And we cannot do justice around this without understanding these three key concepts: scalability, decentralization, security. They kind of look as if they are the same thing, but they know they're not the same thing. So when we say something is scalable, we are referring to you doing so much while paying the same fee. All right. So this is it. I just created a workspace. All right. And I paid £2 for that workspace. But when I want to plug in some things in that workspace so that I can have the fullest of the benefits in that workspace, the service provider will add probably £1 on top of the £2, making it free. That service is not scalable. But if I find myself in another service where if I want to make the best use of the resources, it's up to me or not, the spread or the fee is still £2. So it's up to me. I can create a whole industry while still paying that £2. That solution is scalable. Now, I began by using two strong analogies. One on the left, which is what we call blockchain solution, and on the right, what we call our traditional financial technology infrastructures. Now, in the sense of scalability, you and me will agree that when I want to do a payment or transaction, let's use Ray for instance. You want to pay to someone who resides in UK, probably use the same bank with the bank Ray is using. The spread Ray will pay is not going to be compared to if Ray wants to send me that same amount, but I'm not in the UK, I reside in Africa, and it's going to use pretty much what we call settlement houses or what we call payment gateways. The fee that Ray is going to pay will not be the same, even though he's still transacting the same amount of pounds. Courtesy, the transaction narrative is not the same. So if we have a payment solution that regardless of whether the transaction is within the UK boundary or is within Europe or even outside Europe, you still pay the same fee, that solution is scalable. So that is scalability. All right. Decentralization is pretty much running a solution, but not from the center. The decentralized is oftentimes telling you not the center. And pretty much as we know, information systems management, or the way organograms are run, is pretty much a top to bottom approach. Headquarters at the top, regional centers, regional offices, then loads of branch offices below. Then probably you users interact with the headquarters through the branch offices. Thus, if anything affects the headquarters, business is grounded. Thus, decentralization is demystifying operations such that each branch office has every resources to operate as a standalone headquarters, even though she's not standing alone. And somehow there is an agreement in the organization that any new information that will be processed in that line of operation must be confirmed by a minimum of 3, 4, 5, 6 of these respective remote locations that have been equipped to operate as headquarters of their own. So a single headquarters cannot make a decision. Whatever information a single branch office, who pretty much is standing like a headquarters, broadcast, the remaining branch offices have been empowered to operate as headquarters, right? So they will pick those broadcasts, and if it's valid to the business operation standard or processes of that organization, when they meet the minimum requirement of 5 branches agreeing, that decision, that process becomes binding institution-wide. It means that there is fault tolerance. It means that the whole concept of knocking down the headquarters and business is brought to standstill cannot achieve, because when you knock out one branch offices, there are at least 760 other branch offices that have been empowered to function as respective headquarters. So for the fact that I've gone offline, that doesn't mean that Race United is not online. And if Race United picks up data and broadcasts it, there are over 700 locations standing ready to pick that broadcast, inspect it, agree on it, and it becomes a standard for operations in the institution. So the only way you can bring down that institution is for you to go and invest in a very sophisticated attack mechanism that will attack all the 700 respective branch offices that have been equipped to operate as headquarters of their own at the same time. Now, who has that technology? No one. Now, this is where decentralization somehow works with security. Now, this is where the trilemma comes in. The trilemma is of the idea that you cannot have these 3 futures in one hub. Courtesy of the fact that the first generation cryptocurrencies, to be specific, proof of work, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and the likes of them, built their algorithm, though decentralized, on a consensus that requires computing power. Points of emphasis: computing power. I'm already tempted to dive into the world of Bitcoin. Let's pretty much spend some seconds around Bitcoin so that we can understand. So the Bitcoin introduced what we call the blockchain technology concept. Because some people think cryptocurrency and blockchain mean the same thing. No. Cryptocurrency is not blockchain. Blockchain is not cryptocurrency, but they are linked together. The closest analogy I'm going to give you in the relationship between cryptocurrency and blockchain technology is the relationship you have between your country's fiat and the apex bank that offers your country's fiat that finite boundary to express itself. For instance, the pound sterling in relationship to the Bank of England, the US dollars and the Fed Reserve, the CD and the Bank of Ghana, Naira and the Central Bank of Nigeria. You can see that whether it's CD or pound sterling or naira, they can only express themselves within the boundary that the respective apex bank have created. You can never find naira expressing itself in a CD dominated market. You can never find CD expressing itself in a pound sterling dominated market. If the CD will ever have a room for expression in the UK, it will come through a special window courtesy of the two players, the Apex Bank of Ghana and the Apex Bank of the UK. Look at this relationship between the currency and the Apex Bank as the crypto coin and its corresponding blockchain. It means that the blockchain is that algorithm that allows the currency express itself. Let's go further to say a cryptocurrency cannot find expression in a different or an alien blockchain. A cryptocurrency only finds its expression in the blockchain native to it. Of course, not all blockchains are the same. There are blockchains that we consider as single currency blockchains, and there are also blockchains that we consider as open source platforms. Single currency blockchain means that in that blockchain, only a single currency expresses itself. Perfect example, Bitcoin. But there's also what we call an open source platform or open source blockchain, where not only does the native currency of that blockchain expresses itself, there are what we call alternative tokens that also expresses their self in that blockchain. Perfect example, Ethereum, Tron, Binance, Ton, the list go on. Now let's come back to the consensus mechanism. Consensus mechanism, permit me to say, oftentimes the analogy I use in my courseware is pretty much the exercise book. As funny as it is a perfect analogy for you to understand the concept called consensus algorithm. The exercise book is pretty much the earliest information recording infrastructure as introduced to us courtesy of education. Far back the days of elementary education, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, we used an exercise book. And to write or read information from an exercise book, there is a laid down pattern, a laid down, what's the right word, way of processing information. We who come from the western part of the world, you begin to write any kind of information from the top left and you finish on the bottom right, right? You do not move to the next page until you have exhausted the first page. Everyone writes and processes information from that pattern. Consider that pattern as our consensus algorithm. So someone who is not from the Western speaking audience of the world, let's say for instance, Arabia, Middle East, they don't write from left to right. They actually write from right to left. So how can someone who processes information from the Middle East communicate with someone who processes information from the West if the respective writing patterns are pretty much conflictory? There must be an additional information for you to understand that this is a Western audience, so I better write from what? Left to right. Or you say this is a Middle East audience, I better write from right to left. This way are what machines in a given blockchain type do. The blockchain software is downloaded on those machines. Those machines are dedicatedly connected to the blockchain network 24/7, and they do a simple job of processing transaction, picking broadcast for some blockchain, creating blocks through a guided pattern. For Bitcoin, you must exhaust computing power for you to be able to discover what we call virgin blocks. Because you need the block. The block is like the database, or rather the block is the unit of the blockchain. See the blockchain as a folder of files, and a block as one of those files that makes up the folder. It's just that this block or this file must be discovered. So everyone who is a player in the Bitcoin's blockchain are competing with one another to have a right of discovery. This is what we call mining, a right of discovery. But for you to have this right of discovery, you must exhaust computing power. That computing power is what they call proof of work consensus algorithm. That software works on the processing power of your computer. The faster the processor of your computer, the higher your chances of solving a mathematical algorithm wherein the answer is a virgin block or a new folder or a new file, as the case may be. Why do we need a new file? Because as people are transacting bitcoins from their wallet terminal all across the world, those transactions are recorded in the blocks, and those blocks make the blockchain. Ladies and gentlemen, the first block will happen this time in 2009. So we are 16 years from the first block. We call the first block the Genesis block. The block that is being discovered right now by the fastest machine on the face of the earth and the Bitcoin blockchain will be called the candidate block. If your machine is not up to date, you cannot even be able to broadcast, interact, and even have a consensus expression. First, if the requirements to express yourself in this decentralized environment requires computing power, how can everybody be part of it? Because it takes financial power to build a workstation that can process information fast. Gone are the days where our Pentium laptops and our Celeron laptops can do the job. Now, this is where the idea of the trilemma happens. Because in a given blockchain like Bitcoin, yes, we can achieve decentralization, or rather, yes, we can achieve security. Yes, we can achieve scalability, but we cannot achieve decentralization, all of us, because we must go and put up what we call an initial cost of investment and go and purchase the most up-to-date computing machine for us to have a consensus presence in this decentralized boundary. So everybody who is a Bitcoin player relies on what? Market and wallets. No one goes an extra mile to go and buy that machine and also make budget for that power and also make budget for that electricity to have a consensus participation. But the original plan of Satoshi was everybody should have a consensus presence. But because the algorithm is built on proving you worked, and you can only prove you worked by having the machines that can work, and those machines that can work are not plucked from trees or through the lagoon where we fish, we fish or we pluck mango trees. No, that's not the way it happens. You have to put forward you put forward a capital, and pretty much is in huge numbers. Thus, the goal for global adoption, or what we say, the goal for financial inclusion, was somehow affected. This then brings Pi into the question. If you read the Pi white paper, you will realize that the problem, as stated by the Pi white paper, revolves around the trilemma. Because while Pi appreciates the positives that came from the first generation cryptocurrencies, likely Bitcoin, Litecoin, and the list gone, Pi pointed a new problem created courtesy of proof of work. And the words of the white paper, she called it the centralization of power and the centralization of money. For you to express yourself in the Bitcoin's blockchain, you need money or power. You cannot express yourself right now as a consensus participant in the Bitcoin blockchain without these two resources. But in 2009, that wasn't the whole idea of Satoshi Nakamoto. The whole idea of Satoshi Nakamoto was that everybody should have a room for consensus expression. Reasons are many. The first reason is that when we look at the demography of computing terminals in the face of the earth, the high-end computing devices are not evenly distributed throughout the whole world. That's one. The second, computing terminal that is distributed throughout the whole world is what we call the mobile computing terminal or smartphones. Unfortunately, first generation cryptocurrency projects are not compatible with smartphones or smart devices at the consensus level. Thus, this trilemma will continue unless someone resolves this hardware requirement for decentralization. Let's not forget, decentralization is a future, security is a future, scalability is a future. No one is against the fact that blockchain solutions, or rather first generation blockchain solutions, have powered scalability and have done an excellent job security wise. Nobody will rule that. We still do trillions of transactions and still pay that little spread. The issue now has to do with decentralization, like in the case of first generation cryptocurrencies. And looking at the fact that it's not compatible with mobile devices, being the most distributed computing terminal on the face of the earth, it speaks one thing. If any blockchain solution wants to solve this trilemma, that blockchain solution have to settle for a blockchain that is mobile compatible, a blockchain that is light, at the same time secure, because we cannot achieve decentralization and roll back on security. We cannot achieve decentralization and roll back on scalability. So yes, we must build on the positives of first generation blockchain solutions, which is security and scalability. But because the hardware requirement for first generation blockchain solutions are high-end computing terminal based, and that is not a luxury we have on the face of the earth, looking at the demography of the computing terminal widely distributed on the face of the earth, we have to look for a blockchain solution that is compatible to mobile. This is where the Stellar Consensus Protocol was a perfect pick. As of the time of picking, Ethereum was operating in proof of work, even though as of 2022, November, October, Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. Probably if Ethereum had moved from proof of work to proof of stake, probably Pi may have been a fork of Ethereum. Nobody knows. But as of the time of decision, the blockchain that was light, the blockchain that was compatible to mobile, was the Stellar Consensus Protocol. And what was the goal? We cannot go the Bitcoin route because the Bitcoin route created a problem. What was the problem? Centralization of money and centralization of power. And it's not a luxury we all have. So how can we have a room for consensus expression when we do not have the money and we do not have the power? Thus, if there is a blockchain that ushers in a new or an alternative consensus wherein the mobile user has to go for consensus expression, can that achieve global adoption faster or not? I leave you to answer. And if it can achieve global adoption faster, can it also go an extra mile in achieving the goal of financial inclusion? If the answer is yes, this is where Pi was strategic in her decision. And you're beginning to understand with me that probably if mobile device will continually be the hardware terminal or one of the hardware terminals wherein you can have consensus expression. In other words, with the mobile phone, you can mint some Pi. It means we can achieve decentralization, we can achieve scalability, and we can achieve security. Thus, the trilemma is the thing of the past. Now it becomes very interesting to someone who was asked, how can you tell me you're mining while you're using a mobile phone? That's dumb. Now we have an answer. It's no longer dumb. Because yes, we appreciate the first generation cryptocurrency solution, the likes of Bitcoin and the Litecoin, but the consensus gateway required high-end hardware. And this high-end hardware is not something you get with some couples of hundreds of dollars. You cannot even have it below $100. But we can have decent are mobile terminals below $100 that can perform consensus function. This then takes us to the next question. Is it only a mobile terminal only consensus expression in the Pi network? The answer is no. There are at least 4 roles. 3 of these roles can be powered by mobile, but the 4th role cannot be powered by mobile, bringing some sort of equilibrium, balance. Because when we define mining in the Pi Network's white paper, it has 4 roles. The first role is the pioneer. What does the pioneer do? Only generates data. What kind of data? Proving that he or she is not a robot. End of discussion. And for that data you generate, gives you the right to mint some Pi. Then comes the next role. Not only are you a pioneer, proving that you are not a robot, you also have the consensus option to confirm that other pioneers who have proven or who are trying to prove that they are not robots, you can confirm that actually they are not robots, courtesy of the history of the social interaction you have with them. At this point, you generate a new data towards what the Pi network are considering the global trust graph. What will they do with the global trust graph? Honestly, I have not reached that level of intelligence to know exactly. But the only little thing that I compensate myself is look at the global trust graph as the transaction pathways that pretty much the nodes on the blockchain may build on. And what can we conclude in these transaction pathways? They are transaction pathways that will ensure transaction between real terminals, real human beings. We don't expect transaction between a human being and a robot. Why? The data generated at the pioneer level and the data generated at the contributor level are showing that participating consensus are proving real human beings and real human beings. Now, if we just take a break and using this information to digest the article about partnership, the first thing the Pi network say that they bring on the table is that they bring 14 million anti-money laundering users. How did they come to that conclusion? Because consensus activity from these at least 14 million have been proven that they are real human beings, not robots, not smart contracts, but real human beings. At least this is the benefit of the first 2 roles of what we call mining in the Pi network. The third role is what we call the ambassador. You're not only proving that you are not a robot, you're not only proving that other people who claim they are not a robot, they are actually true about their claim. You're also going an extra mile to populate the ecosystem by bringing real human beings, not bringing robots, guys, bringing real human beings into the ecosystem. For this, you also have an additional right to mint the Pi coin. All these 3 consensus functions can be powered by a mobile terminal. But the 4th role, which we call the node, goes beyond mobile. Because this is where it becomes a little bit technical, even technical for Benjamin, wherein you will have probably some decent computing system, because this is where you now download the complete copy of the blockchain. And this is where you will have the right to function. Remember the analogy I did, the headquarters branch office analogy? This is where you have the right to function as a headquarters, even though remotely located in the blockchain. Thus, whatever is the consensus requirement for accepting a broadcast, verifying transaction from the many mobile wallets that are transacting, and even creating new blocks, whatever it is, you will be a participant. And because of that, we may, I'm not a prophet, I don't have superpowers, so permit me to say we may have solved the trilemma. Maybe. I'm close to certain that we may have solved. But if we go the first generation route, we may not achieve global adoption. We may just empower a little few folks who will turn the economic demography back to the powerful and the rich. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Listen, this answer is obviously subjective, no question about that. We can't conclusively say that Pi Network, by virtue of Stellar Consensus Protocol, have solved the blockchain trilemma. However, we can vaguely say that they may have solved that blockchain trilemma. Now, before Benjamin spoke, I'd read about it like probably 2-3 years ago, and I keep refreshing my memory about that so as to be sure as to whether Pi Network or the Pi Core team, if you want to speak from a developer's point of view, may have contributed into solving that problem. But I believe, in reading the white paper, the whole journey, the purpose of this journey is to solve that problem. That's the purpose of the journey. It's not just global adoption of Pi. Of course, it's primarily that. But if that problem or that issue isn't tackled and eventually solved, we will still be on the pathway of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that wasn't the point. The point of Pi Network is to be different, is to be better. Do you understand? And Benjamin couldn't have said it any better. So I'm just adding a little bit to it, but in a different sort of phrasing, but it's the same thing. So listen, I am really, really happy about what Benjamin has said with regards to that.